Uh, whoa, 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 whoa. Do your thing, girl. Whoa, whoa. Do your thing, girl. Do your thing, girl. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Rooted and Well Watered podcast. I'm your co host, April Carter Wilson.
I'm her husband, J.W. Wilson.
We are so excited for this conversation today. We are jumping into the podcast, and it is drawing from my new book, Rooted and Well Watered, a deeper look at Sarah and Hagar. And in this episode, we are looking at Genesis 21, where Hagar and her son Ishmael are in the wilderness. Hagar is on the brink of giving up on life for her son, and then God hears her son's cry. So in this episode, we're going to explore themes of parenting, guilt, partnership, advocacy, and speaking out for others, and sometimes stepping back. But
Yeah.
we will explore this conversation with our guest today, who has experience in advocacy, parenting, partnership, all of the wonderful things. We've got Cooper and Natalie Jones. Cooper is the father to the perfect son, a beautiful wife. And Natalie is the perfect and beautiful wife and mother of Van Jones. And they are here today just to give us their perspective on what it means to parent, to be an advocate, and to sometimes step back. Cooper, Natalie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So you have a long history in advocacy work, youth development, a rich wealth of knowledge around these topics. But without going too personal, just give us a little bit about who is Natalie Jones.
Yeah, so I've been in kind of the advocacy, government relations, public policy space for a little over a decade now. And I really started into that through a deep interest in the foster care system, really wanting to make systems and spaces safe for not only children, but also families, and seeing if there's ways to strong families make strong communities. So, and if, unfortunately, the foster care system is a example of where some of those systems have not worked for some, and children and families both have fallen through the cracks. So it's kind of started there. It's been a little bit of a winding road on kind of where that's taken and led. Thankfully, Coop's been here for a lot of that journey, but yeah, that's kind of where I got my start, and now we're here.
And Cooper. Tell us a little bit about Natalie and her role as a dependable advocate, the first one to step up to the plate when something arises, about your experience with that.
She's the best wife a man could ask for. Dependable, on top of things, driven, organized, all of those words that absolutely apply to her. As we talk in the spirit of things, it is harder to pull her back than it is to push her forward. She doesn't need any pushing. She'll be there. She'll be ready. She'll have all the information, all the data. She'll have analyzed it. She's there. It's the stopping the rolling boulder down the hill that sometimes you gotta get there. But I trust her completely. And as far as someone that I know is going to be looking after me, going to be looking after Van, there's no one better in the world that I've ever met.
Coop, we might have a similar experience, man.
It sounds like it.
So let's just jump right into it. So what does trusting God look like? When your instinct is to fix it and explain it and rescue it away, it just comes natural to us. So what does it mean for you to trust God, Natalie?
So for me, trusting him is really when I am silent and move into stillness, because my gut instinct and gut reaction is to say the thing, do the thing, dare I say instigate the thing, just my instinct is to act. So when I am leaning into trust, that is when I am trusting God to have that message explained, and me not necessarily having to be the voice, or at least being silent enough where I give him space to speak and work and do the thing. And it, again, so silence and stillness is my trust practice versus activity.
Yeah, and I'd say I'm kind of the reverse.
Yeah.
For me to trust, that's when I have to take leaps that I don't necessarily feel totally comfortable with. God's telling me I need to take the leap, but if it was up to me, I would have been perfectly content staying right where I was. Whereas with you, it's like you'll take every leap possible. You can just make up leaps. We'll hop there. We'll hop there. Yeah, I think stillness for you is your struggle, and leaping forward is my struggle. Or
We
that
need
can
a
we
support group, I think.
right?
Good yin yangs.
So with that, so how do you remind yourself that stepping back, it's not abandoning the issue. It's not abandonment of your loved one, the situation, whatever it is, but rather it's an act of faith and actually trusting in God. How do you remind yourself of that?
And again, for me, because stillness is that act. Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God is something that almost like a mantra that just plays in my mind, that, is a reminder that I can be still and know that that I am the great I am is over this. Also reminding that, God has a greater design. And then also because of the systems and spaces that I've had the privilege of working in, also a reminder to myself that God can do things that we as humans cannot, or at least not unless we're leaning on him, and that is to be both love and justice simultaneously. Um, so again, just those little mantras that I can say to myself and just remind myself constantly. And also it gives me something to do. So I'm not jumping in there ahead of time. I can mumble to myself.
Absolutely love that. And growing up, be still and know scripture, I always focused on the be still, just stop and be still and listen to God. But I forgot about the and know. It is so important to be still and know that He is God. Because when we're being still but we don't know, that's when our minds go crazy. We're like Hagar in the wilderness where he gave up. She was still in that moment, but she didn't know that he was God in that moment, but he still answered.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful too, how Natalie, how you talk about both love and justice. That's something I talk about all the time, and being able to trust and know both the love and the justice parts.
So, Natalie, you spent your career around advocacy for children, families, and systems that often don't work the way that they should. So, how has becoming a mother changed the way you understand what advocacy is? Especially the difference between speaking for someone and empowering someone else to speak for themselves.
That still is something that I'm trying to figure out because a lot of my work took on a whole deeper meaning when we had Van, because now I feel so strongly for my son. I want the world to be kind to him. I want the world to see him as I do. But it's also reminded me that every person that I meet is someone's son or someone's daughter, and trying to have those eyes of the parent. Not that I want to be everyone's parent, that sounds terrible, but but just everyone hopefully has that honor and respect that is due them. But one thing that does come to it, as parents, I strongly feel that our role is to help raise them into people of strong character who can go out and speak their own hearts, their own actions, raising them to be independent and able to carry their own torch wherever that may be, and equipping them to do that. So it has still figuring out how that applies to day to day, but definitely that equipping, that empowerment, that helping others figure out how to stand on their own 2 feet, and also hoping that in the work, also instilling that they have a cause and a purpose and a message that when they're advocating for themselves is worthy of being listened to as well.
I think that's one of my biggest fears probably is because our son is 1, so there's not
Yes.
much, we're doing all the advocating for him because
Yes.
he can't exactly well, he can
Mhm.
advocate for himself, but in very specific ways, is how do you get that independence and make
Mhm.
sure they're not? Because already I mean, they're tiny, but that instinct to do everything for them at the
Yeah.
first peep, you're like, "I'm gonna come help you." Yeah, that how do we help mold him into the person he wants and should be?
Mhm.
It's a scary endeavor, and we're only 1 year into it.
Interesting how that ties back to also that idea of being still and knowing and knowing, because a lot of times advocacy, as you bring up here, is doing nothing, right? For their ultimate good. And that can be a test for you and them.
I was just thinking, to your point, Jerry, in some of the things that we've been, we're in sleep training mode. And, when he peeps at night, it's been such a an instinct to like run and are you okay? Do you need us? What do that? And, all of the parenting books and like let them give them a moment, give them a beat. They might cry a little bit, but just, you know, don't abandon them. But it's okay. It is okay for them to cry. And I agree, but I hate that all the
Well, the beauty of that too is you learn how God feels, right? Because we imagine that God sits back when we're going through things and he's perfectly fine. But no, when you cry out, God feels that same way. He wants to run, but he knows that this is a time for him to be still and let us sometimes cry it out, right?
Just a beautiful analogy all the way through. So when you're thinking about being a parent, your son is 1 year old, so you are making all of the decisions for him. So how do you deal with what could be guilt when you feel as though you have not made the right decision? You've read all the books, you overthought it, you've done everything you can do, but maybe it doesn't turn out the way that you wanted it to turn out. So now you're feeling like, oh, I should have done this differently. So how do you manage the guilt of being the prime decision maker but sometimes having things go wrong?
I think we're probably still figuring that out because we're so new to it. Anytime something doesn't quite go right, yeah. So your first thought is, what could I have done differently? What did I do that led to this outcome? I think right now, just especially since he's having a little bit of a transition period that's difficult, just I think prayer for wisdom and guidance. I don't right now. I'm not sure. Do you have a better answer than than that right now?
I don't know, better than prayer. That feels weird.
Okay.
One thing that I do find comfort in is, I have not met many 18-year-olds that can't drink out of a cup. Everyone, for the most time can learn to walk. Like there is a lot of, at least I can see a lot of trust in the normal progression of human beings. Like it might be taking him just a little bit longer to get there, but stick with it, and things will catch, things will go. And then also going back to that, like, grand design, like he was created with a purpose. And maybe the Lord's purpose for Van's life is that he will be hopefully a great man of strength, but he won't be able to drink from a sippy cup. But probably not. you know so, but just leaning into that, that God created this child with a specific purpose in mind, and it is just our role as parents to help facilitate and shepherd. And I keep, when I pray with him, the word stewardship also, like, comes to mind. Like, how do we steward this little one in such a way that he's hopefully, and again, you can't like miss God's purpose. Like, shucks, if only I'd gone right instead of left, I would have met God's purpose. Like, we can't miss it. But how can we help facilitate that in a way that's honoring and doesn't make it more challenging than I guess it has to be?
So there's a lot of emotional labor that comes with all relationships, really, husband and wife, parents. So how do you share that emotional labor between one another? And Coop, how do you recognize when Natalie may be holding too much and she may not talk to you about it? And the same for you, Natalie. What are the signs that Cooper may be holding too much in and you need to step in?
Yeah, if she's not talking, then I know something's wrong. Yeah, we know each other pretty well. I can recognize your body language and all that sort of stuff. I know when you're when you've got too much on your shoulders. I think acts of service is probably the easiest, or the best way. Especially when early parenthood, there's so much to do. Especially if we both work and trying to navigate all the areas of life, all the responsibilities, and then in kind of classic us fashion, we were like, we're not going to change anything. We're just going to have this 1 year old and still expect to accomplish everything that we did prior to having a child, which I think might be a big cause of stress on your shoulders, that having to drop things is difficult.
Yeah.
You'd rather grow an extra arm so that you can carry an extra thing than put something down. So I think when it comes really down to it, and Natalie needs help, I kind of If I can take it from her and hold it, that's one thing. But there's some things I say, no, we're just putting this away. This is going to go in the garage for now. It's not. We'll touch it later, or maybe we won't. It's not a priority, and it's something that we can let go for right now. And I think that is probably the best way to help ease her stress and emotional labor.
And there's great wailing and gnashing of teeth. There's a great example. I was like, I get so fixated on things like mowing the lawn. It was in the middle of January, right before a snowstorm. Was anybody going to see our grass? Absolutely not. Was I really like bent on having it mowed? Yes. Cooper talked me down off that ledge. So all that to say, I think, and with him, when you go like super inward, you're an internal processor anyway, but when you're even more internal, I know I need to like poke and nudge and, hey, what's going on, and help relieve. It's like those like cans of Coke that you've shaken up. You need to like,
just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little so you don't explode.
That's beautiful. I like how the passion that God gives us and the missions and the calls, they have so much shaping and so much teaching that takes place even in the relationship, right? It adds that difficulty, but that difficulty brings growth.
Are there moments when you know for certain God answered your prayer or something that was in your heart through your partner's actions? Like you didn't really say anything, but you maybe whispered a prayer to God and it manifested in your partner. Is there something that you can point back to?
I think, yeah, I was like, I know that we have experienced that. And I think one of those, like, we're right now is just kind of a little bit of a rough patch, just with lots of transition that's happening. We've had some kind of medical things kind of pop up surprisingly. And I've just been asking for rest and just a break. So, Coop, so very kindly, I did not ask for this, but very kindly, I think on Saturday or Sunday, I forget what day, it just was like, I'll take him for this. You go and take a break. And I like went to our room and read for a little bit, and you're very good about doing that. But it came at that perfect moment where I was like, I am going to explode. And you probably saw that on my face anyway, because this does not hide anything. But I just, again, appreciated you stepping in at that point. And
I think we do a good job of anticipating each other's needs before they really manifest for the most part. I think we pay close attention to each other. So, even before I know maybe how I'm feeling or vice versa. I wish I had like some big moment that I could give as an example, but it feels multiple times a week. There's something that you do around for me or around the house or for him or something. And I just have this level of gratitude for having such a great wife that is doing all these things. And I don't have to ask. We don't have to have a discussion or, it was just little things that help me lift me up throughout the day. It happens pretty frequently, actually.
Coop stole my answer.
So beautiful. Okay, let's turn things a little bit to Van. Who is the one most likely to jump up when he cries?
me, for the most part.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Who's more likely to sneak him a snack?
You
Cooper.
think me? Really?
Yes.
Okay.
That little boy is about to be made of cheese, sir.
It's
So,
true.
Who's more likely to identify or name his different cries?
You know them better than me. You can. Yeah.
yeah, probably me.
Yeah. You'll be like, ooh, this one is that. Oh, did you hear that one? It's this. I'm like, they sounded the exact same to me. I don't know. Okay. If you say so.
Mother knows.
Yeah.
Who does Van think is funnier?
Definitely Cooper.
Oh, I got that one on.
Yeah, unfortunately so.
Yeah. I can just look at him sometimes and he just starts laughing. Actually, there have been times like I'll do something like a facial expression or a noise or something, and he'll have him dying laughing. And then it's like, oh, let me do it.
We'll do
And then
this.
he'll just be like, what are you doing?
I'll try to do the exact same thing and nothing. Mom's not funny.
Dad power. That's dad power.
Yeah.
So, as we prepare to close out the conversation, when you're thinking about moments in your life when you are out front advocating for folks, and those moments where you have to be still and sit back and trust God to show up because He is God, what advice would you give to anyone listening, man, woman, boy, or girl, who struggles with that trust and trusting God to step in and do what they feel like they can do best?
I think the advice that I would give is that it's and this sounds like terrible advice, but it's hard. Like, if trust is not an easy thing, and it is hard. And actually, in reading your book, April, something that stuck out to me was Hagar was the first person who had an angel of the Lord like directly speak to her, and she still had a hard time trusting that the God who has control over all of this, had a design in a place. She still has this moment of despair, and is seeing her son and herself like in this really scary situation. And as a mom, I read that and it was just like, uh, it was so hard to read. And every single time that you're put in that spot to trust, it's still going to be hard. Like, maybe one day trust will be this like super easy thing. So don't grow weary because it's hard. And if it's hard, you might actually kind of be in the right place.
I think you can find a level of peace in the stillness that actually helps take away some of the scariness or the fogginess that when you're in a mindset of just hectic, crazy, gotta fix it, gotta go. It's almost like putting blinders on sometimes, I think. You can't really sit there and see the whole perspective. It's hard to have trust in God. It's hard to see even any of the big picture, where this might be going, where it's taking you. And if you can find those moments of peace and stillness, I think it broadens the perspective at times, just illuminates like, oh, this might be why this is happening. Okay, I see that the path might be different.
I like Natalie's answer. One thing that we talk about all the time, or I talk about often, is this process of becoming. I think it's just understanding that you're going to have to go through this process, and that praying, and then as one day as the becoming goes forward and processes, and you start being transformed, maybe it's a little easier.
That's very interesting, because when we think about being made in the image of God, sometimes it feels like we should already be there. We
Right.
should already have the patience. We should already know how to relinquish control. We should already know how to trust.
And two, these things aren't accidents. The passion that you have causes you to want to have action, is then balanced by the need for stillness, right? And Coop, he's sort of the opposite, right? He needs that faith and hope to move in action. So God meets us where we are to make us who we've been called to be. And it's always sort of going to be sort of custom made for you, and what your passion is, and what the things you struggle with are. Right? Like I'm an action person, right? I'm ready to go. And so my struggles is sometimes sitting back. And so of course then God puts me in those positions where I have to, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Cooper, Natalie, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. And thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of Crying Out for Others. Be sure to get my new book, Rooted and Well Watered, a deeper look at Sarah and Hagar, so you too can join the conversation. Any closing words, Cooper and Natalie?
No, thank you. It was lovely coming on.
Thank you for having us.
I enjoyed talking to you.
See you all on the next episode.
Where all the women, the bachelors on my